So sometimes life can be really difficult, even for the best of us. Even when life is going pretty well, you're never too far away from some tragedy or some bit of negative news. And the way humans are wired, we sort of hone in on those negative points. People could compliment us like 10 times, but if we have one negative comment, we'll hold on to that and perhaps discount the rest. Trouble is, what happens when you're also someone who's highly neurotic, someone who's constantly suffering from anxiety and fears and is just very cautious in life and has to deal with the sort of consequences of having that personality trait. Now, I've discussed before that I feel like this is a permanent thing. If you're high on this sort of big 5 personality test model neuroticism scale, then you're going to have to just basically deal with making life work for you, and you kind of work around everything that goes on in life. And modern day life has a lot of problems that actually makes it quite difficult for people who are neurotic to get on and thrive and survive. And maybe this is how it's always been, but anyway, I'm just going to talk from my own personal experiences of what's going on for me. In particular, at the moment, I've mentioned on this channel how work is a thing. I've got this ambition, like everyone else, to be able to just survive. That is to say, be able to pay the bills, have a roof over my head, have a partner, get married, kids, stuff like that. I mean, I don't know if any of that could ever happen. Parts of it are happening. For example, I've kind of ticked off the partner bit. I found a girlfriend who I'm quite happy with and things are going well there. But the work side of things, that's not going so well. And I realised that I needed to basically find more work, find another job, make more money somehow, do something, because the way things are, basically things are not sustainable. And I'm very aware of the fact that if I can't survive, basically, then even this sort of girlfriend side of life is gonna fade away. I wouldn't expect anyone to be with me if I was just someone who couldn't ever sort of provide or contribute, financially towards the relationship. I mean, some people make it work. There are some relationships where perhaps the female, the lady in the relationship is the breadwinner in a typical relationship, and the man not so much. There's going to be that sort of 10%, 20% of cases perhaps where things are a little bit different, and you don't always have the old school traditional types of men going out, earning a living and sort of being able to provide for a wife and family, that kind of thing. So I'm just talking from that sort of perspective of feeling as though I need to contribute, and I feel as though I need to. My girlfriend has basically said that, yeah, you need to, and I don't think that's an unreasonable request. She's not some gold digger type with high expectations, just very reasonable expectations, I think. And obviously she's with me despite the fact that I'm not making bank. I don't have the 6-figure income, and I don't own my own house and drive a expensive car and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's just where we're at. And up until recently, I've had jobs on and off. It's been really difficult to just hold down a job or to sustain enough of a sort of an income, basically. So just to recap, I've said stuff like this before, but I'll say it again just to sort of build some context. So I'm a bit of a sort of arty type. I'm kind of introvert, creatively inclined. The whole idea of just drawing pictures always appealed to me. When I was at school, and sometimes instead of doing my work in class, I was like, scribbling little doodles on the backs of my textbooks and drawing little characters, things like that. It seems to be like the one thing that I kind of enjoyed and was good at, and so I kind of pursued it to some degree. I never really felt like I had a natural ability for it, but because I was interested in it, I guess the ability or the skill kind of grew from there. And then anyway, I ended up having jobs related to art and design for years and years. And then I had some other jobs in between, because for anyone that has tried to live off of creative pursuits, whether it's writing novels or making music, art, stuff like that, most people aren't going to get it. I mean, if I'm honest, I would imagine that 90 plus, or would we say even as far as 99% of all people that have creative aspirations don't have a career using their sort of skill set, or their, they don't end up achieving the things they want. I mean, I'd imagine even when it comes to like writing a novel, of everyone that's thought one day they would like to write a novel, probably only, I'd say maybe only 10% of those have even started writing a novel, and even, written so much as like 1 or 2 chapters. And then maybe only 1% have actually finished the novel. Then 0 point something percent have actually published and had their book made available to buy commercially. And then only 0.0 something percent, or whatever it is, end up to go on to be able to make a living from their work. It really is a small margin. You wouldn't believe it, because there's obviously this kind of survivorship bias, this phenomena where you can see it all the time on social media, for example. The cream of the crop kind of rises to the top. The things that appear in news feeds, on YouTube, it's going to generally be stuff of high quality and by a few selected survivors, the people that made it, the people that went up through the entire process and jumped through, hoop 1, hoop 2, hoop 3. They successfully navigated jumping through so many hoops that they are to where they are now. But you don't get to see the thousands of people that fell at the first hurdle or couldn't jump through, the 3rd or the 4th or the 5th hoop or whatever. So we don't get to see what life is actually like. But you get a feel for it when you just meet people, you talk to people in real life, and over the course of a lifetime, you're going to talk to thousands of people, and hundreds of those are going to tell you about their lives. Maybe, for me personally, being creatively inclined, I tend to talk about art and creative pursuits. And a lot of people say, oh yeah, I've always wanted to write a book, or I've always wanted to be an artist, I wish I could draw, or I used to like drawing as a kid, but I obviously couldn't make a career out of it. So, you end up hearing that a lot. And you get to the point where you realise, just anecdotally, that there's a lot of people that want a career in some kind of creative field. Unfortunately, it's always been really difficult, and over the last 3 or 4 years, it's got increasingly difficult. I'd say maybe over the last 10 to 15 years, it just keeps ramping up exponentially. So to start with, it's always been hard, but it was valued. Like, you could be a professional illustrator back in the 1950s, and you could, it wasn't ridiculous to think that you could earn, say, £1 million or dollars every year through your commercial creative output. That doesn't really happen for most illustrators these days. And then it basically, things got harder. The internet came along, and basically the internet was fine, that it allowed artists to kind of get themselves out there to the wider public, but it also got everyone out, so it's kind of like the market suddenly expanded, but the amount of artists seeking to exploit that market also expanded, and it expands day on day. And countries perhaps that were a little bit late to the game, sort of third world type countries that didn't have internet or smartphones and things, that perhaps they were excluded, but now countries in sort of China, Asia, Africa, they have these opportunities now, and opportunities to use tools to allow them to connect with audiences that will pay money. For me, I might have been able to head into London, the capital of the UK, which is about an hour and a half from where I live, and I could go there, talk to people that produce products within the UK, within London, and potentially get work. But now a lot of these companies are outsourcing to, for example, China. They don't need a UK-based artist, and there are Chinese artists that now have access to the internet or translation tools that allow them to do this kind of stuff. So just the internet itself, the more it it grows, in a way it's better for, I guess you could say it's better for humanity in one sense, that it allows just more people to have opportunity and access to what's going, basically. But it is just difficult when, you know, you're part of that community, but then because there's so much competition, you know, just from my own, you know, it's all good and well thinking, you know, it's great that there, you know, it used to be, you know, there was some starving kid, you know, in some backward country that didn't have opportunity, and now they do, and now they could be successful, you know. You sort of think, oh, that's great. That's a really good feel good message. And you don't want to deny people of opportunity, but at the same time, it does mean when there are millions of people that have the same opportunity that you did, and perhaps you exclusively did, you know, your job is no longer viable, and you still have to be somewhat sort of self-concerned about life and your life, and you can't spend your time thinking about, you know, how other people, it's great that other people have an opportunity, meanwhile you can't put food on the table for yourself or your family, stuff like that. You know, you do have to put yourself first in these situations. So maybe I'm trying to be very tactful in saying, without sounding like a selfish prick sort of thing, but yeah, it's just the internet, I think now has made it very difficult, like, because there's just so much competition. And the worst part of the internet, I suppose you could say, is the addition to AI tools and stuff. So I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but I just need to create some backstory to show you that, you know, the internet, AI, all this kind of stuff has basically made it very difficult for artists to now make a living. It was always difficult. So here, let me just reel off my CV, and then I'll talk about like what I'm doing now. So I'm an artist who has an artist and an illustrator who has won an international competition with my artwork creations. I've exhibited like about 40 or 50 times my artwork at various events and conventions. I've been asked to do demos for, you know, big high industry clients, you know, household names that you'd recognise at events, things like that. I've written and illustrated books that have sold close to like 1 million copies, sold internationally, translated into several languages. You know, a lot of people, you know, if they scan their bookshelves and are interested in the sort of artwork I do, would find my name on the spine of a book cover, basically. And yeah, I mean, I've got experience like designing websites, graphic design, tattooing, you know, years of experience, decades of experience doing all this kind of stuff. Like, you know, I like have a very broad, multidisciplinary, disciplined CV, if that makes sense. Perhaps communication is my downfall, as you can tell with this video, but the actual skill side itself is, you know, I think on paper, what I'm trying to say is it looks pretty good. You know, like if anyone was looking to hire a designer or an artist, you know, they'd normally say on a job application, you know, even for a junior position, like just try and have like a year or two's experience, understand, you know, digital programs and applications like Photoshop and InDesign, Illustrator, stuff like that. It's like, yeah, I've been doing that, I've been using that. I wrote a book explaining how other people can do that. Like I know this stuff on an expert level. Yeah, I also did I did a university lecture once. I actually went into a university and taught skids. I taught kids learning like, I can't even remember what they were learning. It was like comics and animation, stuff like that. I taught a class. It was only a one-off thing while I was in the area. But yeah, so I you know, I'm not a nobody so far as this kind of thing goes. Even despite that, it's always been very difficult to make a living. And it, like I say, because of things on the internet, increased competition, AI competition, it's just got so hard now that I needed to find another job. And I'd been applying and I hadn't gotten anywhere. And I was getting really stressed out by this. Just no one wanted to hire me. And I still sell my artwork. I sell it on like prints and t-shirts and things like that. But it doesn't make a lot of money. So I thought, given the fact that I'm highly neurotic and the stress of having all this autonomy of being a freelancer for most of my adult life and knowing that I struggle with employed jobs, I thought, right, I knew it would be very difficult for me to basically go into a 9 to 5 or an 8 to 6 these days. It seems quite common. Just given the amount of stress it would cause me. So I ended up applying for delivery driver jobs. I thought, okay, I have a car, I can drive. Maybe, it's a skill I've got that's at least a lot more in demand than artists. There's a lot of competition, but there's a hell of a lot more jobs. Just looking for drivers to, the logistics side of things. And because everyone's ordering things online now, drivers are sort of a requirement. So I applied and I didn't get anywhere. And this is given the fact that I used to even do delivery driving for a pizza place for a while, sort of 10, 15 years back. And even the pizza places that were asking for people which weren't hiring, I thought, well, what's going on here? I mean, there's a few potential reasons for that, but eventually one did. There was a local pizza place that said, just got your CV. If you're interested in coming along doing a shift, we'll do it. So yeah, I guess getting to the point, I had my first shift as a delivery driver. And how did it go? Well, it was obviously pretty scary. Good now that I'm not like when I first learned to drive. Driving was very difficult for me to begin with. I actually think learning to drive was one of the biggest achievements of my life, despite saying, I've had several books published and translated into about 8 different languages, sold over 1 million copies. That sounds good, but the achievement didn't seem as significant as doing the driving, because being highly anxious, highly neurotic, I would get very worried during my driving lessons. I would mess up all the time. I would overthink things, and it took me about 5 goes until I eventually passed my driving test and a hell of a lot of lessons. And actually now I'm actually a really good driver. So it's just a weird thing. Well, I suppose just to bookmark this point, it just goes to show that you can be highly neurotic and still achieve things and end up going on to be really good at things as well. So it's not like it doesn't mean you're completely destined to sort of live a bad, sort of not a bad life, but you know what I mean? Like, you're not destined to never achieve anything. You can still do things regardless. And I think actually, regardless, given the shortcoming of being highly neurotic, it's a massive achievement. So yeah, for anybody that is more prone to anxiety than the next person, I think, in turn, no one's going to give you credit for this because no one can see what you're going through, but you should give yourself credit for it. So anyway, did the driving thing. I'm now pretty good at driving, and yeah, did my first shift, and I didn't hate it, which is good. It's a good start. I like the fact that it's a little bit different from the old pizza delivery job that I had 10, 15 years ago. That one was a little bit more low key. This is a bit more of a busy kind of place where they have sort of different systems in place. And I don't mind it. I think a lot of people will assume that it's a low skilled job that anyone could do. But I don't know, can anyone drive? Do most people drive? Do most adults drive? Probably. I mean, I would imagine, I don't know, like in the UK where I'm from, for example, we've probably got, I don't know, 80, would we say 80%, 75% of adults drive, maybe. mean, it's hard to say because obviously there's a lot of people who you don't see in your everyday life. Maybe they've got like learning difficulties or something, and you know they're disabled and they don't drive, and you just don't get to see that subsection of humanity because you're just busy off living your life. You know, if you're an adult, you're driving to work, you're meeting your colleagues who are also driving, maybe getting public transport. And yeah, if you live maybe in a town rather than a big city where there's less in way of public transport, maybe your sense of it is skewed. I don't know, I could probably just look on the internet and find the statistic for it. But yeah, firstly, not everyone can drive. So it's not, you know, you do need some sort of skill for it. And then, yeah, you need to at least be able to communicate to a decent level with your co-workers. You need to understand the sort of the jargon that is on an order receipt, so that when you're order picking, when you're finding the right, you know, pizzas and sides and things, you understand what it means. And it's not as straightforward as like 1 times cheese and tomato pizza, 2 times garlic bread, you know, 1 times bottle of Coke. It's not quite that simple, but you know, and then there's a procedure for clocking out, and you have to do that digitally. You have to note if you're doing multiple orders at once. You have to work out your routes if you can do that, and all while working in typically quite a busy environment. You walk through the door, you got to grab an order quick, stick it in a bag, take it out, be on the road as quick as possible. I think that's kind of the sort of the busy environment aspect of it is probably the, you know, is the biggest struggle. The actual, yeah, like, I don't want to undersell myself here, but yeah, the job is pretty easy, really, but it becomes difficult when there is a time constraint on it. It's the same with anything, you know, like when it came to like the art thing that I talked about earlier, like, you know, I can draw a very pretty picture, but if you told me I only had 1 hour to draw like a really good high quality pretty picture in, it would put a lot of pressure on me to work quick, and I wouldn't be able to do the job as good as I could if, you know, I had 20 hours, for example. So I think, yeah, it's easy to say a job is easy, but when you add extra constraints, like you've got to do it while under a time constraint, or, you know, you've got to do it while also keeping tabs of, you know, 3 other processes at the same time. And, you know, even simple jobs can end up becoming quite difficult. Yeah, so it could be like running a business, and like the individual parts of each job are very easy. You know, one part of the job might just be, you know, stuffing envelopes, or, you know, checking an email and, you know, replying to an email. But when you put all those things together and you pack it into a day, and you have to prioritize the whole interconnectedness of those processes, can make even something quite easy or seemingly easy become a little bit harder than you'd expect. Anyway, maybe I'm overthinking it all and trying to make it sound more impressive than it is. I appreciate it's a minimum wage job. I mean, in the UK, minimum wage right now, it's £12.21, which is about 14 bucks, 15 bucks. Yeah, I think it's about $15, something like that in American money. I say American just because I feel like, was it like 70% or something like that of people that watch YouTube are American. Then probably like 20% probably like UK, and then like the rest are sort of, from the English speaking world at least, the rest are then going to be like Australia or New Zealand or something like that. I don't know. There's Europeans as well that speak English. I don't know why I said that, but they're just the gist I get from stats. Anyway, so yeah, that is what you get, and then you get basically your fuel cost covered as well. So the pay is low. I'm doing this part-time to sort of supplement what I'm currently doing, which is good because it means going in, doing a short sort of 4 or 5 hour shift and coming home. And yeah, it's going okay. I think so far as jobs go, it's very low stress, other than the time constraint that I talked about earlier. And I think it will even get easier because I've only just started, and over time, once you figure out how that particular shop runs, how their logging process and order picking process runs, and you do the job, maybe once you understand the local sort of environment that you're delivering to, then everything's going to get a little bit easier. It's going to be a little bit more routine, and I think that then takes the pressure off. So far as someone like me, highly neurotic, stress sensitive, I feel like it's a good little something that I've got to do. That kind of just, because I typically will have a set amount of hours. Like I say, it's part time. It's not full time. I'll probably end up with something between 10 and 20 hours a week, something like that. The good thing is it's allowed me to work around sort of other commitments I have. Like I say, I've got a girlfriend. I like to actually see my girlfriend, so I want the weekends free, so I get to do that. So luckily, unlike most fast food jobs, I don't have to work weekends. So that's good. I can just do week work. It's evenings, which isn't good. Ideally, it would just be, if I could pick my ideal time, it would probably be like, I don't know. The shop doesn't open till 11 a.m. So it would be 11 a.m. till, I don't know, 8 p.m., something like that. That would be fine for me. That would be quite a long shift, really, but at some point within that sort of time frame. But something about fast food restaurants and takeaways and stuff. They don't really sell a lot until it gets towards the evening. People would typically order pizzas and takeaways for an evening meal. So there's no need for me to work until in like maybe a 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon start. And then being a night owl, like, it doesn't bother me at all not getting in till 11, half 11 at night, because I don't normally go to bed till gone midnight anyway. The only thing is, I have as a quick aside, I don't know why I'm elaborating on this, but just to fill in some more details. When I do get in later, let's say I get in at 10:30 at night, I then have to cook myself a dinner because I haven't eaten if I've started like late afternoon as a shift. And I've noticed that eating later I think it's eating later, but I've had like really bad sleep all this week, sort of going to bed, waking up like 2-3 hours later, unable to get back to sleep again, then sleeping again maybe for another 2-3 hours. Basically a very disrupted sleep. It's hard to get to sleep. Then you're waking up mid sort of sleep cycle, staying awake for a few hours. It's hard to get back to sleep the second time, and then hard to stay asleep. And all that stuff, it messes with you just in general. So yeah, that's not ideal. I think just perhaps eating later might be the cause of that. It's hard to know. I always find it weird how some people kind of they kind of are able to sort of feel their body if they eat a certain type of food, or do something, have a good day, experience something positive, or they do some exercise or something. They can feel the effects of, or the aftermath effects of that on their body. They're quite in touch with their body, and they understand like what's good for them and what's not, and they can modulate their lifestyle based on that. I find it quite difficult. I just feel like I am who I am. I feel like I just inhabit this husk, this human being that you see before you, and I just completely identify with it. If I'm having a bad day, I just think, oh, this is just me experiencing the world. I feel like I know the reason why I'm having a bad day sometimes. I don't feel like any immediate effect from eating certain types of foods. And I'm like, oh, I know why I'm feeling tired. It's because I ate lots of sugar, and that's now given me a blood sugar spike, and now I feel tired from the after effect of that. I'm not very cognizant of any of that kind of stuff. I know some people are. I don't know if there's a way to be more cognizant of things like that. I don't know how common that is, or if other people are able to do that themselves, or experience these sort of minute effects on their body. But yeah, anyway, I guess, this is really just a sort of a status update, really, just to say that it's funny how, you go from being, like I say, someone on paper who sounds very impressive, sort of from a sort of design perspective, to now doing something which other people would consider very menial and of low value so far as work-wise goes. It's the sort of thing with certain people, like there's a part of me that wouldn't want to tell them that I'm delivering pizzas. I feel a bit ashamed by it, or I feel like those people would judge me negatively if I were to admit that that is what I'm doing for work. It's easier to just say, oh yeah, I've got another contract through for another book that I'm publishing, and they feel, I get the impression they feel as though you're like the next Stephen King or J.K. Rowling or something, and they hold you in higher esteem. And if you say like, oh, I'm now delivering pizzas for a living, it's kind of they see it as though you've fallen. And I'm just happy that at least, I've got the girlfriend. She's happy for me that I've got this job. She even said, oh, I'm proud of you for having that, which is really good to know that there's someone in my life who kind of appreciates it for what it is and doesn't just feel as though it's beneath me. Like my parents, I didn't tell them initially that I was doing this, for example. They feel as though they feel as though their child should be achieving great things, and they don't really, they want me to be happy, but at the same time, so long as it's not doing things that they feel is beneath me, and they feel that things like this are beneath me. They've always, I can just tell there's this sort of, they feel a bit ashamed of me, but what can you do? I mean, it's an answer to a problem. For now, I don't know how long I'm going to be doing this for. Maybe it'll be another month until I have a nervous breakdown and realise that actually I'm not okay with it and I'm struggling with it. Maybe it'll be 6 months, maybe it'll be 2 years, maybe it'll be for the rest of my life. I don't know. But I feel like it's definitely, I was going to say a good thing. I mean, working for the sake of earning money is, I'm earning money. I'm getting something in which allows me to help to pay towards the bills, and that in of itself is good. It's not fulfilling. I'm not reaching my potential. I'm not changing the world. I'm not really changing anyone's life directly. Like some of the books I've done specifically were like instructional, like how to draw type books, and people would come up to me at events that I'd go to. They'd want to shake my hand, have a photo standing next to me, like I'm some type of celebrity, and they'd tell me how my words or my instruction helped them in some way. Most people don't get to ever experience that, but I have, and I appreciate that. That is an obvious sign that what you've done has left a sort of positive impact on people. Working a delivery driver job isn't really going to do that. Maybe it will, though. I mean, I'm very polite and friendly when I go up to people's doors and deliver their food. And in the UK especially, there's a big culture of like immigrants typically doing delivery drivers for takeaways and stuff like that. I heard a statistic that 7 out of 10 delivery drivers are either first generation or even illegal immigrants. So it must be great for the sort of locals around me who sort of look like me, talk like me in general, to be greeted by someone who sort of speaks English and stuff like that and has that kind of, I try to be extra polite and friendly and smile at people just because I know that that's what I would like. And that's what I do like when I have delivery drivers around me. This isn't a racist type thing, it's just an observation. So, yeah, I think at least I can impact people in my sort of local town that in that kind of way, in a slightly more positive way, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you know, when you're sort of inflicted by a sort of high neuroticism trait, it is just all about damage management. It's trying to find work that I can do that isn't going to fuck me up, basically. That isn't going to send me into a massive depression spiral and, you know, just mess with my life in too much of a way. And perhaps that's all you can do. So I guess, you know, to anyone else that's sort of inflicted with, you know, it depends how you want to define it, you know, a turbulent personality, a highly neurotic personality, you know, someone with anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder, you know, call it what you like. If I've got any advice, it's to be, just try and understand yourself, what you can cope with, and limit the amount of shit that is going to come into your life. Don't jump in the deep end. I think for me, this is going to be maybe a stepping stone, and a good stepping stone for just, you know, for me to be able to work part-time in something that I personally find relatively easy. And then maybe over time I can upgrade and do other things. Maybe I will end up going into a full-time design job, you know, employed job, or, you know, figure out how to sort of get my previous business back on track where I could actually start making a full-time living from it again. We'll see. So yeah, just a status update there. Anyway, hope you're doing all right, and I'll see you again in a future video.